Struggles are a key part of life, right? But don't they suck when you're actually going through them? Like, here's the thing. When it comes to struggles for me personally, I've always found that struggles, even though in the moment they suck, I can always speed up that process by connecting with people, by really finding people who've gone through it or have helped other people through it as well. And that is literally why we are here today. Now, you might see that I'm a little bit in a little bit of a different space than normal. Actually, out of town graduating some life coaches this weekend, but I did not want to miss this call or this video because I sent out a message last week and I'm like, hey guys, what are the top struggles that you're going through right now? I call them leadership struggles because always we are constantly leading ourselves. And if we can get through when it comes to leading ourselves effectively, we can really help a ton of different people. So even though a lot of these can be personal based things, they're all things that revolve around our leadership, not only leading ourselves, but being able to lead others and lead our family. And so when I put out that email, this is some of the responses that I got. I'm having trouble with consistency, with getting past inaction, with starting a business, with finding people to hang out with fear of being exposed as a fraud, not rushing to anger, being able to empathize with my family, coaching myself more consistently. I have the feeling of unworthiness, or I'm unmotivated, or I can't get myself to take the actions that I need to take. And I boiled down this list because there was a lot to 10, okay? Now today is going to be a much shorter call than normal, and I'm probably not going to be as loud as normal just because the people next door are probably going to be listening to me as I do this because I'm in a hotel, obviously. But I really want to hit these up because these are super powerful, super important things, and I want to use them to really help you excel when it comes to not only getting through these struggles, but like getting out of your own way, because that is like the most important thing as a leader, okay? So welcome to the call. Welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. We help parents excel massively when it comes to personally and professionally without having to feel like they need to sacrifice their family time or burning themselves out. We do that via quick tip videos on Mondays and Thursdays, longer weekends. I love longer weekends, or longer workshops on the weekend. Today's going to be a little bit shorter than normal, but generally I'm joined by my co-host, Teresa, my amazing wife, who really just helps me knock it out of the park. So that's if you're new, consider subscribing. With that being said, let's jump right into these questions, all right? Okay, so the first question that we're going to tackle is how do I find people that need my help? Now, here's the thing. Hey, Shelly, good morning. Good morning, good morning. So there are a lot of like different ideas that I can have with every single one of these struggles. And I want to let you know there's like not one best right only way. There's multiple different ways you can do all these things. I'm just going to go like more of a speed round today. And then of course, if you have a coach that you're working with, if you need some help with this, definitely reach out. Oh, my amazing wife is here. Good morning, Teresa. But I want to tackle these because I want to give some people some direction, okay? Now, a lot of these questions, believe it or not, these are rooted in head voice, all right? If you are familiar with our life coach certification, our push coach certification school, we talk about this difference between head versus heart. And what you'll see is a lot of these questions are rooted in head voice, and they're like meant to keep you safe, all right? So this one is especially meant to keep you safe. It's like, how do I find people that need my help? Our brain will try and overcomplicate it so that we don't go out there and do the things we need to do to actually find the people, to help people. But when we're naturally just like doing things normally, like we are naturally helping people. Like we naturally talk about certain things that attract certain people to us and we help them get through those struggles. But then when we try to create a business or we try to like really intentionally do it, sometimes we overcomplicate it and we try to be somebody other than ourselves. So here's what I have to say. If you're trying to find people that need your help, number one is I would identify like what is it that you've been able to overcome? What is something that you have been able to struggle that you've been able to get past? Maybe like now it's like a normal part of everyday life, but like it was something that in the beginning you were extremely struggling with it, right? And based off of that, that is the stuff that you would lead with. So when I say lead with, like what we put out on social media, what we put out on podcasts, what we put out on videos will naturally attract a certain type of person. So if we're putting out things like tips on how to do X, Y, and Z, if we're putting out things about us as our core values, what is like personal to us, right? The things that we really value that are important, like for this channel, it's like I talk a lot about family, right? I talk a lot about leadership. I talk a lot about those things because it naturally will attract people who either are leaders or want to be leaders, people who do have a family or want to get like more connected to their family. Maybe they're going through burnout like how I was. And by me talking about it, I'm naturally going to be attracting people who value that. And then what I do is I just reach out to people who are watching my stuff, people who are watching my videos. I mean, some of you guys will see there's like comments and stuff on my videos, right? I'll ask people to like send me an email. I'll get on the phone with them. I'll help them through messages, whatever I can possibly do. But I do that by just like connecting with the people who are already listening to my message. And that is something that you can find groups around. You can, of course, you can just have your own content like YouTube or podcasts, anything like that. Actually, Amber's on here. And she is starting a podcast too. But there's like multiple different ways that you can put out content into the world. And when you put out that content, if it's something that you've struggled through, if it's something that you're really good at, maybe even something it's not something you struggle with, but you just naturally have this ability of helping people get through that. When you talk about that, you're going to see that people naturally either comment or like, or they try to get your attention, and that's when you reach out to them and start that conversation, right? So that's how you help people, is you find people or you start talking about the things that you've been able to accomplish or overcome, and then you just, by doing that, naturally doing that, you're going to naturally attract people who want to hear more from your message, and then you reach out to them, right? Because as a leader, we have to know that we have to go out there and find people. We don't wait for them to come to us, all right? Now, in our programs, we have a way of helping you craft your message. Both Josh and I have a way of really reverse engineering this into talking to in the words that your clients actually, or the people that you want to help actually use. Because sometimes when we achieve something, like that we were struggling with, we often, become an entirely different person in the process. And then we start talking a different language than the people are who are actually struggling with it. So just like really making sure that when you are posting stuff, when you are talking about things, that you're talking about things to the person that you used to be, like how you used to struggle with those things. And then you'll naturally will attract certain people, and then you just reach out to them and connect with them, all right? Let's see. Oh, Carmen has a question. Good morning. Yeah, Carmen's a life coach too. We got a bunch of life coaches on here. So I like having overcome overwhelm, knowing my brain better with ADHD, 100%. I mean, Carmen, that's why you have that podcast and why it's doing so well. It's because like it's something that, and by the way, this is something that like we never ever like totally overcome it, right? Like so for me, Crohn's disease. So I talk about Crohn's disease because it's an autoimmune disease that I developed when I was going through burnout with my police career, right? And so now I can talk about it from a different level. Not that I've like totally overcome it and totally I'm on the other end of it, right? But I can help people get to where I am, right? So that's what I like to think about is like, I don't have to help anybody get to someplace that I've never been to. What I do is I just help enough people get to where I am. And so I have tips and strategies and suggestions. I mean, you already have them on your podcast. And by having that, you can post stuff up on your social media about the podcast. You can share and ask questions about like, hey, like I shared this on the podcast today. What is your insight in terms of like, what have you learned from this? And it's crazy because when you ask questions like that, where you're kind of like asking for your audience's opinion, they'll give you the opinion, but then also you gain some influence in them because you're listening to them. And so they'll be able to flip around and start asking you questions, and you'll be able to ask them questions and really go further down that path too. So you're on the right track for sure. Okay, so question number 2 is how do I get past knowing what's the first step to take? Guys, this is another way that our brain confuses us. It tries to tell us that there's a best way to start. We have to wait until everything's prepared and it has to be perfect. And if it's not that way, it's going to be a mess. Guys, everything that I have had success with, everything that everybody that has been a coach that I've seen had massive success as well, all the leaders that have had massive success is because they went out there and they just started. Like you don't have any idea in the beginning, like what you start with, right? You just go out there, you take action, you go, okay, this was the right path and this was not the right path. Now, that being said, that is the heart voice that I want you to really lean into is like, hey, listen, I know that I just need to go out there and I need to take action, and the process of taking action will show me what I need to do and what I don't need to do. Overthinking is not the solution, right? But you might want to, like, let's say, have a little bit more clear of a picture, right? So here's what I would say about this. Number 1 is, first off, figure out what you actually want to create, all right? So when you're thinking about like the first step to take, you've got to begin with the end in mind, right? So you think about like, what is it that I want to create? Is it a business? Do I want to get to this position in my career? Do I want to be able to feel like this kind of connection with my family? Do I want to be like 100 pounds less than I am right now? And so when I would think about that, when I was 100 pounds more than I am today, I would picture out what it would look like on a day-to-day basis if I was 100 pounds lighter. What were some of the things that I'd be doing? What were some of the things I'd be, believing, saying, thinking, all those kind of things, right? And then from there, you can reverse engineer it into the things, the daily actions that it takes to get there. Now, here's the thing about visioning, all right? When you vision out here, like you have an idea of what it's going to look like, but honestly, you have no idea like what it's going to take to get there. All you got to do is take one step, one step, one step. And it could be, I'm just going to start going out and going on a walk more often. I'm going to start, removing this from my diet. I'm going to start just reaching out to people and asking them what, if I'm going to start a podcast, I'm going to start reaching out to people saying, hey, what would you like to learn from me? What were some things that you'd like to hear if I had a podcast? Like, what are some things that you think that I'm really good at that you would love for me to share with you? And just like literally by doing that, you'll start to figure out, oh, so this is the next action that I need to take, all right? And ultimately, you don't want to overcomplicate it. Anytime you overcomplicate it, your brain will get back into not taking any action. Best way is to take action, sloppy action, and then get better, because you can't improve inaction. All right, number 3. I want to put content on YouTube and other places, but I'm worried about liability. Okay, this is a really good one because as coaches, sometimes we can get a little bit freaked out about liability, but there's one thing that you can always do whenever you start to get a little bit uncomfortable. Actually, there's a couple things, but number one is share what you have done. Like, what have you been able to accomplish? You can always say something like, hey, listen, I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it, but I'm going to share with you my own personal experiences and how I was able to get through it, because maybe there'll be something helpful for you, right? I always lead, and just like I did in the beginning of this call, there's not one right, best, only way to do all this stuff, guys. Sometimes we kind of confuse the people that we're kind of talking to into thinking that the way that we do it is the only way to do it. If you're doing that, that's when you should feel a little bit awkward. You want to make sure that everybody knows there's a million different ways to do this, but I just want to share my roadmap, what I did to get here. And of course, if it has anything to do with health, anything to do with let's say some type of traumatic incident, traumatic past, you want to make sure that they go seek a doctor if it's something about health, right? Or they go seek a therapist. You make sure that you recommend that they go see professionals, because that's honestly what I did, and during all of those times, right? And so as long as you are sharing, this is what I've done personally, this is what I've been able to do, not saying that this is the right thing for you, but this is how I was able to succeed, that will make you hopefully have those less feelings of being worried about liability, all right? All right, let's see. Actually, I think Carmen had another question. I have no idea how to start a podcast. I just did it exactly because I wanted to reach more people and educate them. I didn't get a book on it till I made over 30 episodes. Exactly. It was all about the process of taking action, right? It was the same thing with me when it comes to a podcast. I actually signed up for a podcast course, but while I was going through it, I literally started before I was even done the course. I was like, and it was important because he actually said a part of that was, hey, go out there, just create it, do 3 batch episodes and just put it out there. And, through that evolution, right now we're in Modern Leadership, the podcast, right? But it's actually been through 4 different iterations in I think it's been 8 years since I've had my podcast. And we're closing in on I think it's 800 episodes or something. But I had to get started with that first thing, right? I had to get started with first responder fitness. I was just the fitness guy. And I was doing, nutrition and fitness and all those kind of things. I have since, changed that because I noticed that I really enjoyed talking about leadership and family. And really, health and nutrition is all about leading yourself. And so that's something that I do cover. But I had to evolve. I had to get started with that. Had to get started with what foods could you bring to work if you are really busy? And by doing that, it literally got me to where I am today because I took those actions. So 100%. Great job, Carmen. Okay. How can I validate my family's feelings? Okay, this is a great question. So whenever I talk about validating your family's feelings, it's kind of like giving you, it's kind of like empathy in action, getting them to see that you feel based off of, or that you can really see it through their eyes, through seeing it through their perspective, right? So the first thing you want to do is you don't want to try and fix or correct anything, all right? Because there's nothing to fix or correct. when you're trying to connect with somebody like your family and they're having like an incident or they've gone through something or they're emotional, trying to fix it gives them, number one, the impression that they're broken. They're not. They're just going through an emotional experience, right? But also it kind of like it gets them on the defensive as opposed to you just listening. So there's only this one thing that I can say, it's just listen. All right, I'm going to give you a 4-part system. It's something that I teach inside of my Ideal Leader Blueprint in more depth. If that's something you're interested in, reach out to me. But it's called the lead model. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is when, like, let's say you're, and I'll give you an example of this in a second, but let's say your significant other or your family or your son or your daughter or whatever comes up and they have like a situation that is very emotional for them. Number one, you want to label the emotion for them. Man, it sounds like you're angry. It sounds like you're frustrated. It sounds like you're upset. It sounds like you're confused. By labeling it, you now get them to I guess, try it on for size to see if, yes, I am angry. Yes, I am upset. And even just that, them recognizing that you recognize where they are is a game changer. Then after that, you want to empathize with them. Meaning, like if you were in their shoes, would you feel the same way? Most likely you would. And you can say it, hey, you know what? It sounds like you're very angry. And I could see, like, if I was in your same shoes, if I was in that same situation too, I would be angry as well. The third part of the lead model is A, and that is accept it. So there's no right or wrong emotion. Like emotion is just fueled by our stories, by our thoughts in here, but there's no right or wrong way. It's just you're supposed to feel that way because of what you thought, right? So making sure that they know that it's okay that you feel this way. It's okay, there's nothing wrong. You're not broken. This is just something that happened, okay? And then the final D is deciding, like asking them, like, what do you think you're gonna do? Sometimes I will ask like, hey, do you want some advice? Or do you want me to just listen at this point? But most of the time I just ask them, especially my son, I'll be like, well, what do you think you should do? So I want to give you an example of this, right? So let's say my son, let's say this actually happened. So my son was having an issue with a kid at school. The kid has special needs, but he has, he gets angry and frustrated and sort of like semi-bullies my son, even though my son is bigger than him. And so my son was coming home a couple days and he was like, Dad, this is what's going on. Like this kid's doing this. He's saying this. He's saying that he's taking pictures of me and putting it on TikTok and I don't like this. And so the dad in me and the police officer in me wants to like jump in and fix it. Okay, like who do I need to talk to? How do I get to the teacher? All this kind of stuff. Like he's posting stuff on my kids or supposedly on his social media. And I was like, okay, take a second. Because I'm not here just to fix my son's problems. Like I want to develop my son who can go out and fix his own problems. And so that's when I started to go through the lead model. I said, buddy, like it sounds like you're very angry at this kid. And I said, like I would be the same way. Like nobody likes to have their picture taken and then be bullied and then have it, to have the person tell you it's been on social media. Like I would totally feel the exact same way as you. I said, and this is just like a totally normal feeling, but like, what do you think you're going to do? And it was crazy because in that moment, it was kind of like, he thought about it like, oh, what can I do? And because I asked him that question, instead of him telling me all these things and saying, what am I going to do? I asked him, and then he was able to flip it around. He said, well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to my teacher tomorrow. I'm like, okay, buddy, that's a good idea. Go for it. And so he ended up talking to his teacher. And a couple days later, he came back and he was like, Dad, you remember that conversation that we had about the kid? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I went to go tell my teacher. And she said, just, hey, keep an eye out. If he does this again, let me know. He did it again. And then I had to go into the vice principal's office and I talked to the vice principal about it. And then his mom and dad had to come to the school and he actually got in trouble because he was doing this to like 7 or 8 different kids and they weren't saying anything. And because like he was bullying a lot of people in school, like nobody was saying anything but me. And so because I came forward, like he got in trouble and he's not going to do that anymore. And I remember just seeing like my son's face that he had solved an issue himself. And then I didn't like jump in to fix it. And like I connected with him on a different level than just telling him what to do. And that process came because I was willing to like actually validate his feelings. Like, hey, these are normal feelings. Like, this is what like I would feel the same exact way. And then I took him through the lead model. And by doing that, I empowered him to go out and to take those actions. And then he was also very not only confident, but yeah, he boosted his confidence because he's like, you know what, I was able to do this. I was able to save other kids, and that's for him. It's a big deal. Like when it comes to like feelings, like making sure that he protects other people from feelings, because he's like he's like my feelings guy. Like that's just what he naturally does. He also has ADHD, but he's like very connected to people and their emotions. And so when he realized that he did that because of his power of coming up with a solution on his own, it's been a game changer. And now I just do this all the time. And I'm like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? And he solves his own problems when I lead with that versus what I do sometimes still, which is going to explaining and sharing. And this is what you can do. Here's the 3 steps. That's not really connecting with them though. And after I get done with that, I'm always like, man, I really wish I had like taken a step back and used some emotional validation experience from my past, and then of course the lead model. So I hope that one helped. That was a little bit longer than normal. All right, question number 5. Fear of being exposed as a fraud because I have made a lot of mistakes in my life. That's also why I want to help people not repeat my mistakes. Okay, so fear as being exposed as a fraud. Once again, that is our head voice that will try and prevent us from going out there and from helping people. It's there to keep us safe. It's there so that we don't get thrown out of the tribe. Like back in the day, that would have been an important thing not to do, right? But it's also there like to live in the past and not to live into the future. Now, you were able to actually spin it around to your heart voice at the end there. You said, listen, I just want to be able to use my past experiences to help people not repeat mistakes that I actually did. And that's what we're here to do is if you think about like all the things that I teach on this channel, all the different strategies, all the different leadership tools, all the different ways of losing weight, all the different ways of coaching myself, like they all came as a result of me messing it up for a long time. And through that process of messing it up, I've been able to come back on the other end and learn so many different valuable tools. I just taught you about the lead model, right? That is because I screwed it up for a long time. So when your brain starts to think about like what happened, like you're still messing stuff up. You're still not like 100% successful. You're still not doing this 100% of the time. That's okay because you're a human and you have a brain. That's just the way that it all works, right? But when you can go back and you can say, you know what, actually this is my superpower. My superpower is I need to just help enough people get through the things that I did to get to where I am right now. Yes, there's always going to be places to get better. There's always going to be places to like continue to lean in, continue to get more, right? But that's just the way that life is. It's supposed to be like that, right? So this personally, I know this is something that I personally struggle with when I first got started with coaching, but it's a matter of realizing that you just have to help enough people get to where you want, all right? And that's it. All right, question number 6. What if this doesn't work out and I waste my time? So this is something that no matter what it is that I do, I don't care if it's a sport, I don't care if it's something that I do when it comes to like leadership, when it comes to work, when it comes to business, when it comes to whatever. There's so much to be gained by doing things, especially if they don't work out. Like this is a science experiment, guys. This is about trying and testing and adjusting and evolving. You can't improve inaction. So if you never do it, you're going to fail by default. But if you go in, you do it, and it doesn't turn out the way you hoped it is, you gain so much experience. I remember when I was early on in my police profession, I had a lot of police officer 3s, which are like, they're called FTOs, field training officers, that I would work with, and they were teaching me things. I had a very few who actually I was like, man, they really enjoy what they do, then they were super helpful. Most of them at that time, 20 years ago, were very angry. They would yell a lot. They would make me sit in the car while they went inside to get food, and I would be just sitting in the police car for like hours. Like this kind of stuff, like they taught me how not to teach and train when I became an FTO. And so it was that process of going through the suck, like really not enjoying it, that got me to go like, okay, this is exactly what I'm not gonna be. Like how many things have you had happen in your life, guys, where you've actually done things and you're like, actually, this is evidence of what I don't want to be. And because now I have this evidence, now I can make sure that I'm not that thing, right? And so it's not the fact that you could potentially fail. It's just the fact that you getting out there, you trying new things, whether or not you learn the right way to do it or learn the wrong way to do it, you're learning. This is the way it works, right? Like Josh always says, like your outward success is a reflection of your inner growth. And if you're not growing, you're not trying new things, like you're never going to be able to succeed and create that stuff on the outside, even if it's not the thing that you ultimately end with. Guys, this is just a perfect example. We kind of talked about it earlier. So I co-created a life coach certification. I'm actually in Tulsa, Oklahoma right now to graduate more life coaches. Like, do you think that when I first started out creating a business around how to help people lose weight, that this was going to be the case, that this is what I was going to end at? No, it was an evolution. It was like, okay, let me help some people lose some weight. Okay, let me help some people get ready for the Spartan race. Okay, let me help some people connect better with their family. Let me help some people like get better with leading themselves. And then let me help some people like learn a little bit about coaching. And then it got to this point where Josh reached out to me and we connected and we created a life coach certification school, right? And now we have like 83 different amazing, incredible life coaches that are out there. And we're starting a new round coming up now. But I would have never been put into this situation if I hadn't done that first thing, which was just like signing up for an MLM business that got me started. And that was an important part of my tool belt, right? Is getting in there, doing things, and I learned so much from it, okay? And you're gonna be no different, all right? So what if this doesn't work out and I waste my time? Well, I guarantee you that if you don't try it, you'll 100% be wasting your time because you'll never have an opportunity to actually grow. Okay, number 7 is how do I find people who have similar goals than mine? Okay, so this question was based off of somebody was asking, like, hey, I want to grow in these areas. I mean, for Carmen, it might be like a podcast. For me, it's YouTube. For other people, it might be like coaching or social media or whatever. First off, is like identifying that area that you do want to grow in. Like, what is that thing that you want to be able to accomplish? Like when it was my health and fitness, I wanted to accomplish like losing weight and feeling great and just normally going out and working out and eating healthy and not having to force it. And so what I would do is I would find groups, programs, coaches, mentors, books, podcasts, everything in alignment with that specific thing. Meaning if I wanted to, like, let's say eat healthy and exercise, I wouldn't be hanging out with people who at LAPD were like going out to get pizza all the time and saying they didn't have enough energy to work out and didn't have, all the different tools they needed to before they could, start to get healthy. Like if I hung out with them, it'd be very easy for me to naturally start to take on their actions, their thoughts, and their beliefs. But instead, I find a different way. I ask myself, like, for example, like this is my year of YouTube, obviously, right? I ask myself, like, who are some people when it comes to YouTube that want it just as bad as me? They're excited about this. They're wanting to learn new things. They're willing to try new things. They're willing to put themselves out there. And I align myself with those people. Now, for me personally, I jump into taking courses and masterminds. Like, I know that I can either spend my time or my money. And I'd rather spend my money and speed up the process, which is why, like, in 3 months, we hit 1,000 subscribers, right? It could have been, I've seen people do it like 2 or 3 years of trying to do this, right? But for me, I'm like, I need to lean in and I need to learn this as quickly as possible. And so if I surround myself with other people who are learning as quickly as possible, it gives me this exponential growth. It's the same thing I did with podcasts, same thing I do with business, with health, with family. I mean, I also did the same thing. Like you guys probably saw, I had a live call with Larry Hagner talking about patience, right? I spent about 2.5 years inside of his mastermind programs to develop myself into a better father and a better husband. And by doing that, it's natural for me to do those things now. I don't even have to think about it because I sped up that process by joining something that a team of people that were heading in the same direction as me. So find people, whether it's programs, courses, groups, podcasts, books, whatever you can do to speed up that process. And of course, if you actually pay for a program and a product, that generally will speed up the process as long as you really do connect with the actual person who's teaching it. 100%, like that is going to speed up the process for you. Okay. All right. Number 8 is how do I create a group coaching program? All right, so a couple people have asked us this, and we teach this inside of our programs. Once you become a life coach, we teach you how to do this, but I want to talk about like really quickly how you would create a group coaching program. Now we're going to go back to what we said earlier when it comes to like what are some of the things that you've been able to accomplish or overcome yourself? What are some of those things? Whether it's like losing weight, whether it's like getting more organized, whether it's like really helping with like attention, like whatever it is, like what is that thing that you've been able to overcome, all right? Now, when you think about this thing that you've been able to overcome, what you've been able to create in the world, I want you to think about like, what are the 3 things you did to make that possible? So let's break it down into 3 different things you did to make that possible. Now, let me give you an example. So let's say you're talking about losing weight, all right? So for me, it was fitness, it was nutrition, and it was accountability. Those were my three like interconnected circles. So fitness, nutrition, accountability. Modern leadership, okay? Leading yourself, leading professionally, and leading your family. Those are the three things that we do to become modern leaders. We lead ourselves effectively, which is like self-coaching, right? We lead professionally, which is also self-coaching and leading and leadership confidence and influence. And then we lead our family, which a lot of it has to do with like emotionally connecting, creating an environment of psychological safety, that kind of stuff when it comes to our family. Those three pieces bring us into the center, which is becoming a modern leader, right? The reason why I say three is because it breaks it down easy, because if you're going to do a weekly call, what you do is the first week, you break down that first pillar. The second week, you break down the second pillar. The third week, you do a call about the third pillar. And the fourth week, you just do a Q&A or a coaching session, right? This is if you're a coach, right? So for me, if I was like doing health and fitness, the first week I would talk about like something related to fitness, all right? Which could be 72 million things, all right? The next week I would do something about nutrition, something a little different than maybe I did last month, right? And there's a million different things you could do there. And then the third piece, I would do something about accountability, something related to social cost or getting you to really show up, right? And then the fourth week, I would do some type of live Q&A, maybe answer questions, maybe do some coaching using the push method, all the things that we teach inside of the certification. And then the next month, I would start over again. First week is fitness. Second week is nutrition. Guys, here's the thing. Like, so many people think, well, like, I'm going to run out of things to talk about. You never run out of things to talk about. You just think of things, how to talk about it in a little different manner. But remember, oftentimes we need to hear the same thing over and over and over again more than we need to learn new things. It's not this constant like, oh, I've got to learn new things every single time. No, you've got to be reminded of the things you do know so that you go out there and you take action on it, right? So that's really how we recommend that you do this, all right? We go into a lot more detail in our programs, but that's the best way to do it, all right? Not the best. That's one of the best ways that I have found to do it. There you go. All right. Question 9, how can I be completely intentional with all of my time? Okay, this is a tough one, but I'm gonna break down something that I learned about like how to refocus when it comes to like being intentional. This is something that Teresa is like a master at. So if you haven't connected with her, definitely connect with her, right? But when I think about intentionality, yes, we need to be where we are, both physically and mentally, right, to really get the most out of that situation. But like the way that we are as humans is it's very easy to kind of get out of that. And so I like to have some kind of way of getting back into the moment that I can take myself through, like a step-by-step process to make sure that I am physically and emotionally, and I don't know how you can be emotionally present, but you probably can. But like be here within your brain and here physically and mentally. And so what I do is I ask myself to go down the sights or the five senses, all right? So 4 of them are always relevant, all right? So the first one I say is like, when it comes to sight, okay, what is it that I see right now? So if I look around and I look at like my hotel room here and the different things that I see, I'm very laser focused on things that maybe I didn't see a couple minutes ago because I wasn't focused. I was focused on the camera, right? And so instead I can like look over and I can focus on that and look at it and really just take it in to really understand like, hey, it's like this stuff is here, right? My son is here. My wife is here. You know what I mean? And being able to like just see something like will bring you back into that space. The next one is hearing, right? So what do you hear? So you can even close your eyes on this one if it's easier, but like what are some of the sounds that you hear? And when you're hearing, like for me, I can just hear my voice echoing off the walls. I hope the neighbors aren't going to be upset, but like that's what I can kind of like hear, right? And it brings me back into that moment because I can actually, if like let's say I go outside on a run and I'm running and I'm like just running and I'm not like paying attention to my surroundings, right? I can be unintentional when I'm running. But if I look around and I look at like the cars and the grass and the flowers, and I'm like, wow, I look up at the moon, I'm like, wow, that's a freaking awesome moon, right? And then I start listening and I start hearing, right? I hear the birds, I hear like maybe some cars, I hear my feet pounding on the ground, like whatever that is, it gives me that moment of being back in the moment, all right? The third one is touch. Like, what are you like touching? Like even right now, I'm sitting in this chair. I'm touching this table, the microphone. Like if you're running, your feet are touching the ground. Thinking about that, like being intentional about the thoughts of what it is that you're touching. If I'm with my son, I see my son, I hear him and I hear his voice because like he's going through this stage where his voice is getting really deep. And then I can touch him, meaning I can hold on to him and feel him. And that just brings me like more intentional into that moment. All right. And then the fourth one is smell. Like, what do you smell? I know all of you guys who have kids, you know what your kids smell like. Like, it's just a natural thing, right? But we also know like how, like, chocolate chip cookies smell. I remember when we used to go into like a car dealer, like they would always have like chocolate chip cookies because they knew that that made people happy. But like there's these smells that remind you of where you are. So if you're outside, you're running, and you just take a second to smell, like, okay, what do you smell outside? What do you smell wherever, right? It just brings you back into that intentional moment. And the fifth one obviously is taste. This one, you have to figure this one out for yourself. But like sometimes it can be like something you're drinking. It can be something else like that, all right? But more often than not, it's those first four: sight, hearing, touch, and smell. So anytime that you're not feeling intentional, just ask yourself to check in with your senses. What do I hear? What do I see? What do I feel? What do I smell? And by doing that, you'll be able to get back into that moment. Now, I wish that we could just do this all the time, but with total, like a lot of distractions that are going around, it is very difficult, but it's just about bringing yourself back into that level of intentionality, okay? All right, question number 10. We're here at the end. Emotional regulation. How do I develop the skill of patience? If you haven't seen that one, guys, I will leave it up at the end of this video. Larry Hagner and I went through a patience masterclass, all right? Now, we talked a lot about doing it as a parent, but this works for anything. This is exactly how I became more patient as a coach, more patient as a police sergeant, more patient as a father, more patient like in every aspect of my life. I was not the type of person who had more patience. One of the things that he talked about is like this space in between what's called stimulus and response, all right? I'm going to go through it super quick, but he has multiple other tips that he's given in that workshop that I'll share, okay? So number one is like when something happens, take a second to breathe and then think about the actions that you're going to take next. Don't immediately respond or react, all right? Like my son says something, somebody says something at work, something happens. Instead of just emotionally outbursting, get control of your emotions and just take a little bit of time to think about it. What typically happens is when we lose our patience, we aren't thinking about the repercussions. We aren't thinking about what we're about to say, and then we say or do something that we are not wanting to say or do. It's because we didn't give our body, our brain, enough time to think. There's this thing called the prefrontal cortex, which is super important, and you can use it when you stop and slow down and go, okay, that just happened. Let me think about what to do next. What's crazy, guys, is it'll take like 3 or 4 seconds extra to do that. And as long as it's not immediate, you'll take a much better action. You'll take a much better next step than you would have if you just immediately blurt it out and it's basically coming from your unconscious mind, okay? So definitely make sure you check out that patience masterclass. I'll leave it up here at the end, okay? All right, guys, those were freaking powerful questions. Thank you guys so much for being here. I hope this has been helpful. I'll leave that patient masterclass up for you guys to check out. But also next weekend, we are going to be back here. Teresa and I, well, not back here. I'm going to be back at home. We're going to be tackling your next question. So if you have any other additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We appreciate you so much, and we will see you guys next weekend. All right? Bye, everybody.